Hey, ladies and gents, and welcome to our discussion over Sony's press conference for E3. As always, I'm joined by Dom and Jordan. What's up, guys?
Beyond!
What's up?
Say it, Dom. Beyond!
Beyond.
It's
So we're gonna be talking
PS4
about-
time!
Oh, God. So we're going to be talking about Sony here. They started off with the orchestral kind of intro to the whole thing of the guy on stage, the conductor, and then the first thing we see is God of War. This was a huge surprise, I think, not in the sense of like seeing God of War. We assumed it with all of the leaks and everything, but just that it was going to be. I thought this was going to be their one more thing moment. Personally, I didn't know they were going to lead off the show with it. But yeah, so we saw God of War look gorgeous. Dad of War, I guess is what you would call it.
Good one.
Yeah. So you guys are the Sony guys. I want to hear your guys' opinions on God of War and this unveiling. What do you guys think?
I think that it was a great decision for an opener. I think it was probably their strongest game besides Detroit that actually had gameplay. I know Detroit was kind of like pseudo gameplay.
Yeah.
But yeah, those two were probably their strongest gameplay demos. I think they were stronger than Days Gone. So I might have put God of War at the end and maybe Detroit at the beginning and then Days Gone somewhere in the middle. But I still think this was a great opener. We were just talking before the show about some of the changes that they're making to the series. They're making a lot of changes. I mean, it'll still feel like God of War, but I think the reason they didn't put a subtitle, which I was kind of irked about at the beginning, is because they truly do want to reboot it, not just from, like, the story is a continuation, but they want to reboot the gameplay. So the camera angle has changed quite a bit. It looks like it'll be more heavy weapons because you start out with an axe as opposed to your really light blades of chaos. And you have a son with you who's going to be your little companion along the way, it seems like. So lots of gameplay changes that, in my opinion, I think were much needed for this series.
And it also has like a dedicated button, right? Like the kid?
For the kid, there's a dedicated button, and then, like I said, we know they're continuing because they talked about it afterwards. But also, there's like Spartan Rage that Kratos can use by clicking both sticks in, and so it seems like he still has his powers and has carried them over into Norse mythology.
Yeah. So Dom, what do you have to say about God of War?
I'm kind of with Jordan. I like the changes they made. 'Cause every other God of War game didn't really appeal to me very much. Kratos as a character was not ever interesting. I never played any of the previous games, but it looks interesting. It looks a lot more, Dark Souls-ish kind of.
Yeah.
Much more methodical. Maybe not quite as much, fast action, but I think this is a good change. I'm excited to see more of it because we saw a decent demo, but I'm curious to what the whole game is going to be. There are going to be sections that are a little more akin to the old God of War style stuff. We'll see.
Yeah, I think this is going to be in the vein of like Tomb Raider in the sense of it is like an expansive world that you can explore, but there are these like clearly zoned off areas, that are their own little thing.
Yeah.
I do think it's smart to actually try to make Kratos a character people care about because though he is a cool character, he was never a character you cared about and you didn't really have a lot of depth to him. A lot of people say it best, like, you play him in the first game and he's very angry and that's cool, but then you just have a guy shouting at you for 3 games and it kind of gets old, I do like that they're trying to walk this line of him trying to keep the old Kratos inside him. They're not kind of getting rid of that whole thing of his past and making it like, Kratos is happy now for some reason. There's still those little tidbits of like, this is still the old Kratos we know. He's just trying to be different, trying to be better. So yeah. I do like that there's those sprinkles of like, this can turn at any moment. He can become the Kratos we are used to seeing, and I think that'll be a big playing point in the story of him trying to fight his true, quote unquote, true nature. And yeah, I think this is going to be an awesome take for this God of War game that, for instance, somebody like Dom just didn't care about, and now is more, I think more linear as far as story and like a lot more character building. I think this is basically the the Naughty Dog effect of these other people at Sony seeing that people like these character-driven stories, and though I do think it'll have pretty solid gameplay, the God of War game. I do think it's weird though that it doesn't have a subtitle to it, but I do agree with you. It makes sense that they're trying to, give God of War a new coat of paint. There you go. Yeah, I cannot say it for the life of me. It's kind of like they were actually having a discussion about this, how different like Zelda is from what we're used to seeing Zelda. It's like this like gaming renaissance of things that we're familiar with changing completely. So yeah, I'm psyched for God of War. I think we don't have too much to say about it. I thought that the QTEs are still there, which a lot of people dislike, but that is God of War. Like, I'm used to those QTEs in God of War games.
They weren't there actually. That's what I was saying earlier. He just used his Spartan Rage. They were saying that there won't be QTEs in this one.
Oh, there won't be.
Yeah.
Oh, that's kind of. I think that the troll fight kind of seemed QTE. It just didn't have the prompts on screen, is what it seemed like to me.
It was. He had to use his Spartan Rage to like finally take him down, and so it was just clicking that one button, and then it played the animation, and so that's kind of like what you were talking about, Dom, with it calling back to old games or whatever. I think they're kind of trying to turn away from that as much as they can. And then Jared, you mentioned the Tomb Raider look of it, like the exploration and stuff, and they're saying that it's going to be even a little bit bigger than Tomb Raider as far as your open areas that you have to explore.
Okay, so it's interesting. I think this is getting probably the open world makeover kind of thing.
Yeah,
it'll be interesting to see how it plays and stuff like that. But I think we're a little far out. I could see this game coming out the end of next year, but to me personally, I don't know if that's the case. This could be a 2018 game for me.
Yeah,
that's what I feel like. There definitely is enough there to justify saying it could be fall 2017. But anything other than that, me personally, I don't think that's happening.
I'm not sure. They had the reason that Santa Monica hasn't had their own game out in so long is because they had the canceled sci-fi RPG that they were doing with the writer from Battlestar Galactica. They got canned a few years ago, maybe. And then, so I guess they have two teams because Ascension came out in 2013, and then this one will probably be 2017 or 18. So they might even have another game not too long after that.
Yeah, true. So next we're going to be talking about Days Gone. This is Ben's game. It was finally shown. This is the Daryl Dixon simulator, Last of Us 1.5. I thought it looked cool. The zombies, like I said, my only issue is they seem very paper-ish. You just mow all of them down. It doesn't seem like a lot there.
Yeah.
For me personally, if you go through an entire game where you're killing zombies like that, it kind of gets away from the fear, I think, of the zombies, of like they're just really nothing at all. And maybe that's just the case of we ran it. Well, they're not really zombies. I guess they're freakers. But even then, it just seemed a little weird to me. This game, it seems like it has a lot of promise, but I definitely am not 100% sold. What do you guys think about Days Gone? Are you fully in? Are you still wondering what the rest of the game has to hold? Like,
I'm pretty much fully in because I love the genre so much. I share the same concerns though, because if you look at a game like Dead Rising, it handles giant hordes of zombies in a much more realistic fashion than these guys who were kind of just falling down from what seemed like BB gun bullets.
Yeah.
And they were just by the tens and hundreds were just falling down one after each other. But I think the motorcycle gang aspect of it is going to be really cool. It's kind of got like a Sons of Anarchy meets The Walking Dead vibe from it. I don't know.
Yeah,
that's interesting. I think for me, Bend has a lot to prove. I've never played any of the Siphon Filter games, so
neither have I.
I'm not sure. Like they haven't spoke to me in that sense. But I do know that I really wasn't a fan of Uncharted Golden Abyss, the last game that they did on Vita. And then they had a couple canceled projects, so it's looking like it's probably going to be like 7 years in between releases for their game. And I'm just not sure that Days Gone is them bringing it as hard as they could after a 7-year gap.
This could be them looking at Naughty Dog, I think. That's what it seems like.
It definitely, we were talking about this, I think it might have been off the show, but talking about how there's a lot of Sony first-party titles with Days Gone and Horizon and even I guess Detroit, you wouldn't say this, but they definitely look like they could be made in the Uncharted 4 engine, or looking to Uncharted 4 for artistic direction in some ways. And it kind of, I don't think that's a good thing at all. To me, as a Sony fan, I think that really gets me worried about the direction that their first parties are taking. I don't want it to congeal into one homogenous looking spread from Sony every single year with all their exclusives. I want everything to feel diverse, and that's why I like Detroit so much. So yeah, I think Days Gone looks, to me, I think it looks a little weak, but we haven't seen very much, so I can't say that for sure.
Yeah, the only difference I think though with Horizon and with this is that Guerrilla has a portfolio of games people liked. People can argue whether or not those are fantastic games or not, but they still have a portfolio. Yeah. I think Ben's portfolio isn't necessarily something that people speak to as being like, these guys make great games, and that's the only thing to worry about.
Yeah.
And it just we'll see, I guess, when we see more of this game. It does look interesting though. I'll give it that. It doesn't look boring by any means. It just looks like something I want to see more of before I kind of pull the trigger on whether or not I'm excited. Next up, speaking about pulling the trigger of whether or not to be excited, a game that's been so long in the making, Last Guardian. We finally got a release date, October 25th, 2016. It just, to me, this game looks like a game that should have came out 5 years ago.
Oh, yeah. Looks like a PS3 game.
Yeah, it just does not look great. I do hope it's good, though, for the people that have waited so long, but I don't think it's going to be. We've talked about this multiple times. I think it's going to be a mediocre game at best. Yeah. I'm glad this game finally has a release date so we can stop talking about it after it comes out. I'm tired of this being a subject of discussion in everything I listen to, constantly it's like, oh, but what about Last Guardian? I'm tired of just hearing that. I have no interest in it. I don't care about it. Just finally come out and we can stop talking about it,
I feel the same with Half-Life 3. I'm like, I'll play that game at some point if it ever does come out, but yeah, I'm just done hearing about it. I feel like Last Guardian has overstayed its welcome several times over.
And it's going to be particularly problematic because of all the hype that's been built and all the people that are going to buy this game having, not been a part of the original, crowd that wanted it, not really knowing what it is, but everyone's talking about it. So, a chunk of people are going to buy this and be like, what the hell is this?
Yeah, yeah.
Because it could never live up to the hype that's been created for it and the anticipation, right? It just can't. It's not possible. Same with Half-Life 3, I think.
When people talk about Ico and Shadow of the Colossus, I think they have rose-tinted glasses for sure. I don't think those games are really nearly as good as people say they are. I think it was just a pretty early example of a very artistic game, and so that wowed a lot of people back on the PS2, and they kind of carried that through up until now. And so I think a lot of people will agree if they go back and play either of those games, even the HD versions on PS3, they're not quite all there. And so this game maybe deserved a third sequel, or a second sequel, I should say, but I definitely don't know that it deserved to have all this leeway, 10 years of development time.
Yeah, and I think with Shadow of the Colossus too, though I do agree there are some rose-tinted glasses, I think it did have something special to it in the sense of we never really saw a video game to that scope, like the fights, right? And it was just something interesting and cool. This just doesn't seem like it has that hook. Like there's something there. Like, Last Guardian may be a meh, but it does have this that you need to check out. This is the reason you need to play Last Guardian. It may not be the greatest game front to back, but there is this cool thing you need to check out. I don't really think it has that. Whether or not you think Shadow of the Colossus is good or not, it still has those wow moments of check out these bosses you fight in this game and how you take them out. I still think it's an interesting experience to have as a gamer,
Yeah.
Whether you want to play that game front to back, I do think it has a hook that would want people to at least try it. So, yeah, I'm just tired of this game being talked about. I want it to be out already.
It's so weird how different all three of these games are. I would say that this game is the most similar to Ico as opposed to Colossus, but they're still all three for a trilogy. They're all really very different.
Yeah. Before we move on, I'm going to cut this part out. One of you should try canceling your video, and then the other one try to cancel and one of you stay on a picture while the other one tries to get the video up. So Jordan, you should try to cancel your video and then redo it, and then see if. Cause I think both of you tried redoing your videos at the same time, so it freaked out. I guess maybe, I don't know. There we go. Now try yours, Dom. That's what it was. I think both of you guys started at the same time, so freaked out. So we'll just cut that part out. Alrighty, so enough about Last Guardian. Let's talk about Horizon Zero Dawn. We've seen plenty of this game. This game was a huge game of the show for a lot of people last year. What do we expect? We saw this dialogue, and a lot of people are complaining it was weird. To me, it felt very Fallout. I'm fine with that. That's what I expect in an RPG. We saw the world fleshed out a little bit more, though there's not really a whole lot you can show that's not going to surprise us. That will surprise us at this point, rather. I'm really jealous of you guys for having a PS4 for this game. I think this game looks solid. I think it'll be an 8 at the very least, and that's at the very least. I just think this is going to be a really solid game, and I'm glad these guys are done making shooters and they're actually trying something interesting and fun and new. This could be a big franchise. So what do you guys think about Horizon Zero Dawn? What are your guys' takes?
I think it looked very good. Again, we didn't see a whole lot of brand new, crazy, innovative things compared to what we saw last year too. But it's looking like it's running a lot better than the demos I saw last year. And they showed us some of those RPG elements that they have built into this. So yeah, I'm glad too that they got away from Killzone and the first-person shooter games to do something really open and big like this. And I think this game is going to be huge. I think this is going to be really big for Sony. I'm very excited for it.
Yeah, what about you, Jordan? Horizon Zero Dawn.
I'm excited for Sony to finally have a first-party open-world RPG. I think it's something that they've really been missing for, these last two generations now. And I don't think that Days Gone is going to be that, but I do think that Horizon is, and so it's nice to see, even if it is delayed until next year, I think, see the dialogue choices, see the crafting. They kind of broke that down for us in the demo, how you're going to get pieces from these robots and all that. And the story trailer that they released right before E3, I thought was really, it got me really, really hyped for the story. It seemed like, they're kind of selling us on Aloy, this character. I'm not so sure about her, but
I want to know about these dinosaur things. Like, what the heck? How did this happen?
That's what I was about to say, is this world that she's in is so interesting. And I do think Joel and Ellie from The Last of Us are really interesting characters, but they also had a world and groups of people around them that were very interesting as well. And I think that's kind of the vibes I was getting from the story trailer for Horizon.
I think, to me, it draws, and hear me out, let me get to my point, because at first it's going to sound really weird. I think this game is quite inspired by Portal, in the sense of, so in Portal, you're in this very contained area, and you don't really know about the world outside of you, and one of the big things is you finally see the world, but you don't really, right? I think this is kind of the opposite thing. I think it's the world is at your hands, but then it's going to be these closed, contained areas where you find out, well, are these man-made? Who's making them? What's the whole thing behind it, I think it's kind of the opposite of that. There's this world, and then you're going to find these little narrow aspects of it that kind of give you the pieces to this game, and you figure out what it is. Because, that's the biggest thing is, how did these machines come to be? How are they sentient? What's going on, I think it's a really interesting story. I think it has legs to be a big franchise if they play it right, and if it is solid. So, I'm super excited for Horizon Zero Dawn.
You kind of just blew my mind with that Portal reference. I totally get what you're saying, and it really just hit me hard, because I think, of course, we're in the age where we're getting tons and tons of open world games, and all of these open world games, of course, you get only a portion of the map at the beginning, and you usually have to, like in Ubisoft, climb up a tower to discover parts of a city or whatever it is that you're discovering. But there's so many of these open worlds that don't feel, it's not that they don't feel interesting. They may feel interesting, but they don't feel like you're discovering enough. And I want to give a shout out to The Witcher, because there were so many areas that I got to, or these secret monster bosses that I found in these nooks and crannies that were just so cool and imaginative, and you could tell that 2% of the people that play this game are going to see it, but these devs really went in and decided, we want you to have awesome places to discover. And I think that Horizon is going to be really, really good at that, and I'm excited because there's not enough open worlds doing that.
Yeah, I think it's when you think about these open worlds, you think about how much they can put on the screen, how vast everything is. But I think if you can make the small experiences feel just as good of these little areas that you can find, I think that's where you hit the sweet spot because it does reward you for exploration.
Yes.
It does make you feel as if,
and it's not.
yeah, I'm going. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say it's not like little points. It's not like, oh, you got XP points, or oh, you can pick out a skill now.
An Easter egg.
Yeah, it's like these are like personal, experiential rewards that you're making yourself happy by finding it. That's your personal takeaway reward.
Yeah. So next, I want to talk about. This was probably my if I'm looking down the list, this is probably my favorite game that was shown at the PlayStation conference. It wasn't on my game of the show simply for the fact that I didn't think they showed enough gameplay for it to be on my game of the show. Detroit Beyond Human, I think they nailed it explaining what this game is to people who aren't familiar with David Cage games. I think they explained that there's multiple ways of an interaction to happen. I actually showed the trailer to my mom and she found it astounding. She thought it was really cool of how this one thing can happen in a lot of different aspects of like you shoot him, you don't shoot him, you save the girl, you save the girl but you fall off the building. Like there's many iterations of the same ending.
Yeah.
And that's a really cool way to play a game because right on there you're showing on screen replayability. You're showing the reason you can play this game over and over again and it'll feel different every time. Heavy Rain was a knockout of the park for most people. Beyond Two Souls was, a sack fly, if anything, I guess. A lot of people didn't like that game. I think the huge reason that game didn't gestate well with people was it was out of order. I think if that game would have released with the new remixed version that's actually everything in a sequential timeline, I think people would have felt better about that game. I think anytime you have Ellen Page in a game, she's a good actress, and I think she was the best part of that game. But yeah, Detroit Beyond Human looks fantastic. I think it's going to be a really solid game. It's going to look really cool. If you look at any interview with Cage, you're going to see he says the word emotion like 97 times. So hopefully, I'm assuming that's a big factor in this game. This is another game kind of like God of War that I could definitely see coming out at the end of 2017, but could be pushed to 2018. What are your guys' thoughts on Beyond Human?
Become Human.
Become Human, sorry.
I think it's going to be 2018 at the earliest. That's just the vibe I got. I think God of War might be closer, but yeah, I think this one will end up getting pushed out of next year. But yeah, these types of games were never on my radar, really at all. But this looked cool. I mean, I like the setting and the plot points, right? Of this like these AIs who are like basically the one AI kidnapped the little girl and was holding her hostage, right? Yeah. And he was freaking out, and they can feel oppressed and all that. Like I just love that kind of universe where that stuff's going on. It kind of reminds me of like Deus Ex sort of stuff, right? Or trying to think what that movie was called.
Ex Machina?
Yeah, exactly. I think that's a really cool concept, and like we mentioned in one of the previous podcasts, I could see that in the future. That's probably how humanity would react. When we introduce AIs like this. But I think it looks cool. I want to see more of it, though, because, again, this isn't necessarily my type of game. But
yeah. Real quick before we get Jordan sick, I just want to say I own 2 games on my PS3. I owned Heavy Rain and I owned Last of Us. So I'm super stoked to see a Heavy Rain next-gen game. Yeah, that's all I got to say. What do you guys say about...
What a great choice for buying one of the best consoles of all time with one of the best libraries of all time.
Those are the only 2 games that interested me on the console, so...
Well, I would say you should... check out God of War Saga, which has all the God of War games you can get it at GameStop for like $15, which would be a great bridge over to the new series. Which I was gonna say, Dom, I'm thinking about the timeline here, and Beyond Two Souls came out in 2013, God of War Ascension came out in 2013, but Quantic Dream hasn't had any canceled projects since then. So I'm thinking Detroit will be out before God of War.
Yeah, could be.
I think this may be. Obviously, we have Horizon in spring of next year, and I think this could be their fall game. I think Heavy Rain probably wasn't going to be like your big fall game, but I think this could be a big fall game for Sony. I think this is going to surprise a lot of people. I think this may be. I know you said a lot of people felt like Heavy Rain hit it out of the park, Jared, but for me that game was quite rough. I thought it was a good game, but I wouldn't even consider great in my mind, and I haven't gotten around to Beyond Two Souls yet. So, with this one, I think that this is where Quantic Dream really nails it, and I think that this is where they gain a big audience to where now people, even though they aren't first party, people will mention them since they exclusively make PlayStation games. They'll mention them alongside Sucker Punch and Naughty Dog and Insomniac. So, for me, yeah, I think this game looks amazing. Love the sci-fi aspect. Like I said earlier, I think it was one of Sony's best showings with all the different choices. Yeah, it could be a really big mainstream hit. Like you said, Jared, your mom was interested in it. And one thing about Heavy Rain is pretty much anyone could play it, kind of like a lot of people were doing with Until Dawn last year. Even people that didn't really get into games could get into this kind of interactive experience, movie game type of thing. So I think this could honestly have some real mainstream appeal, especially now that you have so many PS4s on the market.
Also, because exactly with Until Dawn, you have all these people that maybe have spouses or family members that don't play video games that played Until Dawn with them, and you kind of show them this new game, and they're like, "Whoa, I want to play that. You should get that. We can play that." So
and sci-fi's hot in the mainstream right now too. So yeah,
exactly. I think it's hitting all of those sweet spots. So now we're getting into the VR section of the PlayStation conference. Resident Evil was the first thing shown. We got a release date, January 24th, 2017. We've talked about this in our episode 16. My big issue with this is I want to see how much the scope of the game is affected by this game being playable with VR from front to back. You guys, I think you said, Jordan, you played the demo that was super easy to find and came out right on time. Yeah, it looks like it went back to its horror roots, which I'm happy for. I'm just concerned about the scope of the game, but I want to hear what you guys have to say about Resident Evil. We've talked about it at the podcast, but specifically for this discussion, what did you guys think of the showing at the PlayStation conference?
I like where they're going with this. Compared to, I played 4 and 5, never even bothered with 6. But from what I saw, yeah, like 6 in particular was just way too action centric, and it just didn't have any of like the horror elements that 4 was kind of like filled with, and that's what made that fun to me. So this 7 looks to me, it's almost a little bit too much like PT or some of those kinds of games, but I think I would still prefer that to like Resident Evil 6, right? So I think it looks cool, and I'm happy that it's in VR. This is what this is what Sony has to do to get people interested in that platform and to justify spending $400 on it. But you're right, that does require extra dev time for the VR portion, which means the rest of the game, I mean, from a budget standpoint, has to suffer. So,
yeah, Jordan, what do you think?
I think that like I said on the show, from what I played, it doesn't seem like VR is going to take anything away from this game, and I definitely think that Resident Evil is a big enough franchise with a big enough publisher in Capcom to have the backing that it needs to be as big budget as it needs to be. So, Dom, what you said about PT, yeah, I feel like it's it's just kind of copying PT in a way, and almost unabashedly, but it wasn't nearly as good as PT. And another thing to note is that the developers have said that it won't be in the final game, so it's a little bit hard to tell just from the teaser and what we saw at the conference, but it at least seems to me like, even though they're changing from third to first person, which I think is a mistake, but it's obvious for VR, it does seem like they're going back to those horror roots that you found in 4 that so many people have been begging for, and getting away from this over-the-top action from 5 and 6. I really, really hope, though, that they don't kind of just go, well, we tried Resident Evil and people didn't like it, so let's just go with what Silent Hills is. And that's really not true. They tried fucking up Resident Evil just like Dead Space and making it an action series, and that's what people don't like. So I hope that they know people want Resident Evil. They don't need to make a Silent Hills clone. That's my biggest worry with this game.
you also said you don't even know if you're going to shoot in the game, which worries me because, like, I understand you want to bring horror back, but you're just going to make it a complete. This seems like they're making a VR experience. You know, I don't know. It's really weird to me. A majority of people are going to be playing this out of VR, so that should be. I understand you want to make it work with VR and you want to sell and all that stuff, but like, also, why wasn't this? I can go on and on about Resident Evil 7, but some quick.
I think it's a VR exclusive on PlayStation.
Oh yeah, but I'm saying like a lot more people will play the game outside of VR.
Sure. I just wanted to mention it's not on Vive or Oculus.
So,
I mean, it's the same thing when you look at the gap between console generations. When they launched PS4, you know, devs still had to take the time to put games on PS3, which pissed everyone off on each side, right? Because if you still only own a PS3, then you're going to be like, you know, not necessarily willing.
It's a little bit of a different situation.
Yeah, I think it's different. Remember, I talked about the whole thing with Connect and Move. Like, I think it's a completely different beast. I do understand your comparison. It is a great comparison to make, but yeah, we'll see as we see more of this game. It's coming out relatively soon. It comes out before Horizon.
I think VR may help this game because it, you know,
lends to the horror.
Like, in order to play VR games, you're going to need something more powerful than a regular PS4. That's why the PSVR even has its own separate processing box to deal with that type of stuff. And so, if anything, it might give it extra power or extra scope that it couldn't have had just being a console game.
Plus, you have to imagine that all the people who did buy the PSVR are going to also. This is going to have a high attach rate for PSVR, I would imagine.
Oh, yeah. This is that.
Well, yeah, it doesn't seem like there's a lot out there to begin with.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of hurts it that it's horror because horror isn't the most mainstream genre, but this is the first, in my opinion, system seller for any VR system.
Exactly.
And it's the first, if it turns out to be really good, it'll be the first killer app, as they say.
Well, and it's the thing of like you want to be the guy to own VR, so your friends can come over and check it out. And what's the best way to have your friends check out VR? Scare the hell out of them.
Yeah.
So it doesn't make sense.
I think that might be the worst way to show people VR.
I think it'd be hilarious. So a couple of quick hits here. They're not very small announcements, but I want to get through them, and you can talk about specifically which part of it you want to talk about. So PSVR getting an exact release date of October 13th. They showed off Farpoint, which is this really cool space VR game that looks really interesting to me. I don't think it got the hype it deserved. They showed off the Star Wars Battlefront VR mission, and then they showed off the really cringy Final Fantasy 15 VR gimmicky thing. Yeah. Any of those three things, what do you want to talk about there?
That Final Fantasy VR stuff was absolute crap. That's all that should be said about it.
Talk about pandering. It was so cringy, weird. Yeah, I did not like it at all.
It is worth noting, I really didn't think Final Fantasy 15 would have a presence this year at E3 because of the Uncovered event that they just had and because of the fact that it's coming out pretty soon. So, they had obviously that terrible demo at Xbox that didn't go very well, and then they had this PSVR trailer. But what's worth noting is the fact that they pasted this Final Fantasy 15 trailer right in front of the VR thing. So they also had, Sony had their own 15 trailer, and it was not a bad trailer. It was actually pretty cool. So I'm like, it's kind of weird that you just threw those together. I feel like people would be talking more about that Final Fantasy 15 trailer if it hadn't been attached to that terrible VR demo.
And that's the weird thing that they did that with Final Fantasy, but they didn't do that with Resident Evil 7. Like, why not have a normal trailer before the VR experience that you show off, That's weird to me. So this, you were talking about killer app with Resident Evil. This game actually comes out before Resident Evil, and I think the way people are talking about this, how they have the demos behind closed doors, the Rocksteady's Batman VR game comes out October 16th, or October 2016. I don't think it has a specific release date. This could really be the VR seller. Apparently it's like a crime detective kind of game. It takes the best parts of Batman and stuff like that. It looks, or we didn't see anything, but it sounds really interesting. I've heard numerous people talk about the behind closed doors kind of demo of it.
But is it gonna be a full game? Is it we know Resident Evil is gonna be a 12 to 15 hour experience most likely. Do you really think that's what Arkham VR is?
Yeah, I think
because it's made by Rocksteady, and they just came out with Arkham Knight.
I think it's a 60-minute experience. I think it's a smaller scope thing, but I still think that doesn't discount it being a killer app. I think with VR initially, I think a lot of people aren't going to want to be spending a lot of time in VR. You're going to have to get used to it. It's an experience you're not used to, you know?
Killer app, yes. System seller, I would say no.
I agree with you on that. I don't know. A lot of people love Batman though. So if you're going to the store and you're getting PSVR and you see there's a Batman game on it, that could be a system seller. Think about how many more people know Batman than they know Resident Evil, just in general.
Well, I'm just saying I would rather have these fully fledged. Like if I'm going to spend $400 on essentially a new console, then I need a full Resident Evil game. I need a full Batman game. I need a full sports game. I need a full Metal Gear or whatever, you know, just like I need some AAA, not appetizers. I need full course meals, and that's not what any of Sony, HTC, or Oculus. I don't think they're giving me enough to buy any of these platforms.
We also have to understand the price point. Like, what is this game going to ship at? Like, what is the price point of it going to be?
$20-$30.
Yeah, they have to figure out a unique price point, and I agree with you that there needs to be some big substantial stuff. I do think these smaller things work if there's plenty of them. If you launch PSVR and there's one or two experiences, buying a $400 machine for you know 2 titles that cost like $20-$30 that I'm going to have 2 hours with, that doesn't necessarily sound great to me. I would kind of hold off until, like you said, the Resident Evil 7 comes out in January, so that's giving me 4 months, you know, like I do think once this has VR is gonna live off of its library, right? Its catalog. Yeah. So it's gonna be a hard thing to sell people it early, so that way they are in hopes of having a library. See, it's kind of like when Nintendo's gonna have to do with NX. Like you have to promise people a library they're gonna want, you know.
That's what I'm saying. Even if there are this whole plethora of, you know, 20-minute, 30-minute, 60-minute titles, and they're all less than $60, sure, you're going to get, you know, plenty of rich kids and rich older people that have the money to drop on a $600, $800, or $400 VR system. But even then, they're going to be expecting what they've gotten before with an Xbox or a PlayStation. They're going to be expecting a full console library, and they're not going to get that. And so even the rich early adopters are going to be like, oh yeah, buddy, don't buy that because, you know, it doesn't have enough like full experiences. I think they should have had, each of these companies within the first year should have had at least 3 what we would call AAA titles with recognizable franchises on their exactly, on their VR headsets, because that's butts and seats is essentially what it is. It gets people's attention, and I don't think they've done that like all across the board, all these headset manufacturers.
I'll use the same analogy as before, right? When you release a new console, when you release a PS4, yeah, you have to have at least a couple AAA launch games, right?
Yep.
Can't be a bunch of
Knack, Infamous. Yeah, you got to throw them in there and throw them at people and get their attention.
Black Flag, I believe, was one of them.
Yeah, and this is the worst part is we haven't said anything about VR being bad or it won't be an experience we don't want. It's like, does the price point justify it? You know, that's the big issue here of like the library. So we'll see how VR goes in the coming months. This next thing I want to talk about is actually for me the check Twitter, check texts part of the Sony conference, because I completely tuned out because I could care less. Was the Call of Duty mission that they showed. For me, I'm already really mad that they're doing the whole paywall thing with the COD 4 remaster. It's a game I wanted for so long, and like I said before, I'm not going to discredit what I said before. I was like, I'm going to pre-order, I'm going to get it.
I wouldn't say that's a paywall, though.
Well, it is. You had to pay $80 to get COD 4. You can't get it any other way.
Well, the term paywall to me is kind of flawed, because every game is a paywall, right? You got to pay
to get
to the game.
Yeah, I guess that's wrong verbiage to use. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. If you were using the correct term, that would be like if they made you buy some stupid DLC in a game to get that full thing. But
that's what I feel like. That's what I feel like. I'm buying stupid DLC.
Fully fledged. You know, like it may be Ghost and it may be kind of the worst Call of Duty ever, but Infinity Ward knows how to make an RPG like fully fledged $60 experience where you get multiplayer and a single player campaign. So that $60, $80 paywall that you're talking about comes with a completely substantial product.
Yeah, but this also comes off of Activision doing what they did with Destiny too, so I'm already kind of jaded with that. You know?
I get. Yeah, you're right. It's just the wrong verbiage.
Also
Yeah.
worth mentioning, I don't know if you guys noticed this, but they did say that the single player campaign from Modern Warfare Remastered, will be available to PS4 owners 30 days early. They
Yep.
pre-order
Yeah,
the game.
that'd be awesome if you could buy the game by itself. That'd be, I don't know.
Jared, you're going to
really
be able
bothers
to
me.
in like 6 months. I don't know why you're freaking out. They just want people to
I
buy the game initially.
I don't think so. I
Yeah,
think
no,
this is
they
gonna
just
be a
want to
hill
make
they
sure
die
that
on.
people buy Infinite Warfare initially because it got shit on so hard with the trailer and everything. And so once people, because yeah, I mean, we talk about how your first 2 months after launching a game, that's where you make your money. So they're
Yeah.
going to do that, and then 6-8 months down the road,
Yeah.
next year in 2017, you'll get that digital release of COD 4 remastered, and maybe if people make enough noise, then they'll even get a disc
Yeah, but
version.
the thing is, knowing Call of Duty games, by that 6 to 8 month grace period, everyone's going to be moving on to something else. Like,
Well, yeah, but this is
the-
like a 10 or 12-year-old game. Like, you've been wanting this for a long time. I don't think it's gonna just. This game is going to have legs, like freaking Overwatch.
I just think they handled it wrong, and it just like I'm tired of Activision acting the way they do.
I think
I
you're
do
butthurt.
appreciate. I am, but it sucks though. I think it's dumb. I think if they did this with a game you cared about so long ago, you'd probably feel the same
No,
way.
I totally agree that it's dumb, but I'm just saying this is a corporation being a corporation where they have to
Yeah.
get people to buy. Because, if you made the choice, even if they were, COD 4 was a lower price, you're still going to be like, oh, well, I got 10 multiplayer maps in the full campaign. Like, that's enough COD for me for 1 year, and you're just not going to pick up Infinite Warfare, or a lot of people wouldn't. And so
Yeah.
they have to get those initial sales.
I do appreciate that they had way more. They had way more by one flight-based missions than Battlefront. So
I will say, Battlefront or Black Ops 3 last year got my ears pricked for Call of Duty. I wasn't quite there, and it's still not quite up my alley. But them doing these futuristic and sci-fi, the space stuff, it at least gets me looking at Call of Duty in a new light and saying, this is maybe something I would be interested in buying on a sale, because it's not that same old, 2018, 2020, very close future combat warfare.
yeah, and their shooting mechanics are solid. I think Infinite Warfare is going to be a solid game. I don't think it's going to be a bad game by any means. It just
Sure.
It just bothers me of having we've gone over it. So next up, let's talk about the huge announcement that got everybody crazy. The Sean Layden comes out on stage with the Crash theme playing,
Yeah.
and people thought it was going to be the Skylanders announcement. And people were like, "Oh, who cares?" But then he actually said that Crash 1, 2, and Warped are going to be remastered, rebuilt from the ground up. I guess was his exact verbiage on that.
For all platforms, too, by the way.
It's not Sony exclusive,
No.
Are
really?
you sure?
I'm 95% sure I read that. They didn't say it at the conference, but I think it's come out since then that this is going to come to Xbox and PC also.
Well, it makes sense because Activision owns Crash.
That's just weird, because those are PS1 games, and they weren't on. Microsoft didn't even have a console back then.
But I think it's since Activision owns the rights to Crash, and I think they have the right to do that. There probably might be some timed exclusivity, I'd assume. So they'll work out something.
It really felt like Activision was getting one over on Sony, being like, "Sure, buddy, we'll give you Crash Bandicoot.
Exactly,
But you got to
yeah.
play a Skylanders trailer at your conference."
Yeah, exactly.
Yep, exactly.
And they want it, Activision definitely probably lobbied to have it on Xbox and everything else. Because, well, if we're going to do this stupid Crash thing again, they probably don't even want to. They're like, we're going to put it out there for more people to buy it.
And they're like, well, do we have to say that when we announce? And they're like, no, just don't say it's exclusive. And they're like, okay, cool. Yeah, I don't think there's much to say about. I loved Crash as a kid. I'll play these if I own a PS4 by the time they come out, which I probably will, because I doubt these will be anytime soon. I think almost everything at the beginning of this conference will come out before those Crash remasters, I think.
Personally, I think that Sony could take Crash and give it to Naughty Dog. Give it back to Naughty Dog, and I think Naughty Dog could either do an awesome Crash or awesome Jack game. And I would love to see, I could totally see what Crash or Jack would be like today on PS4. But I'm thinking we might just get kind of a, have some stupid studio do it that doesn't know what they're talking about and just make some crappy Crash game.
Yeah. Next up, this was the weirdest thing to me in the conference. They showed Lego Star Wars Episode 7. I mean, it's not surprising that it was there. It just seemed out of place with everything else. I don't think we have much to say about Lego Star Wars, do we?
I think that was a cool trailer. I think.
Yeah, I thought it was a really cool trailer, but it's.
And I'm glad we're getting Lego Star Wars Force Awakens, even though I'm probably not going to play it.
Yeah, those Lego games are always solid. I think they're like Telltale games in the sense of like if you're into that brand or the IP that they're making it for, you definitely want to get it. But yeah, Lego Star Wars, not much to say. Next up, let's talk about the weirdest thing at Sony's press conference. Kojima comes out on stage, walks on this light up walkway, says I'm back, even though his game came out in September.
Yeah, he never went away.
And then they show this really foreboding, very weird, very spiritual trailer for Death Stranding with a lot of like dead sea life. Had Norman Reedus, we were excited for it. Pans up and you see him in the fetal position.
Baby.
Yeah. Let's talk about that. The rumor that or the theory that's going around. Jordan, let's talk about that. About what Death Stranding actually is, or the trailer for it, anyways.
Yeah. So I don't know if the game's going to be about this, but there's a lot of people online speculating that this trailer is a story about him leaving Konami and Kojima's breakup with them. And basically, yeah, we see these beached animals, which that's apparently what a stranding is. Whales will accidentally get themselves stuck on beaches, and then they'll get close enough to the water, but not close enough to actually get back in, and so water will come in and get inside their blowholes, and they'll drown to death. So that's apparently what the title is. But as far as the Konami references, yeah, we see these stranded animals, and then we see Norman Reedus' naked body curled up with one hand in a handcuffs. And then we see a baby lying next to him. He picks up the baby. Next shot, we see the baby as he kind of cradles it, fades away from his arms, and then he kind of starts crying, I guess. And then he looks up into the sky and sees 5 figures floating high above him out over the water. And so what all that is supposedly meaning, if this is what people think it is and it's a reference to Konami, then that would be the handcuffs are him breaking free from the imprisonment that Konami had him kept in, which of course we know, he wasn't allowed to go to the VGAs and accept his awards, and there was all this other crap where he wasn't allowed to go do things because Konami wouldn't let him. And then the baby disappearing from his arms is most likely him having to let go of the Metal Gear Solid series, which is obviously his baby, and something that he's worked on over all these years. And then the 5 figures floating over the ocean would be the 5 mainline Metal Gear Solid games. So very deep, you could tell with the music. It was like obviously supposed to evoke emotions, and I think it's definitely a possibility that this theory could be true.
Yeah, and also he had Norman Reedus' character had an incision on his stomach, kind of where you think the baby would come from. So it's like them ripping the baby from him.
Yep,
yeah,
they cut Metal Gear Solid out of him.
I don't know if this trailer has literally anything to do with the game.
Who knows?
Because it's so early.
It was so cryptic. Speculation at this point is, to me, is completely useless. That's a cool theory, but who knows? This could be a space monkey game set on the moon where you throw shit at other monkeys. I don't know. We have no idea.
Yeah.
Death Stranding.
Yeah.
God.
Fling poo at other monkeys.
So this was one of the biggest surprises. We saw a Spider-Man game, but it wasn't Sucker Punch. It was Insomniac.
Yes. Dude, I am so pumped on this. For one, it means that, Sucker Punch is free to make another Infamous game. It does suck that this takes Insomniac away from Sunset Overdrive 2, which will hopefully happen at some point, but I am so excited to see them doing another superhero game after Sunset Overdrive. So excited to see that it's in the Sunset Overdrive engine, and this superhero, specifically Spider-Man, is what they need to be focusing on. Marvel needs to be making video games that are awesome at third-person action adventure hopefully open world RPGs, and Insomniac needs to be back on PlayStation after they went over to the dark side and made Sunset Overdrive on the Xbox. So yeah, man, there's so many layers of this game that I'm so excited about.
Yeah, I love the new Spidey suit too.
The
A lot
suit,
of people
yes,
were indifferent.
the white is
it.
so bold, and I love that.
Yeah. What about you, Dom?
Yeah, like everyone was surprised that it wasn't Sucker Punch, but instead Insomniac. But everything, I mean, there wasn't necessarily gameplay, I don't think, but it was kind of.
There was gameplay, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, what we saw
more than Mass Effect.
Right. What we did see, I thought looked really cool. And this is, to me, this is like a home run that Sony has this as an exclusive. This is huge, especially because there's a Spider-Man movie coming out, and all the hype around Marvel right now is kind of like everyone's into Marvel, and so this was a good catch by Sony and good timing, especially.
Yeah, I think the timing is everything.
Yeah.
So there's not much to say about Spider-Man. I don't think wasn't a lot shown, but it does. We are all hyped about it. Let's talk about lastly before we close out on the Sony conference what we didn't see. Neo. We've talked about this before. I think Jordan, you said you're kind of upset that they didn't try to get in front with this, right? They just kept it out of their show. Like, what are our opinions on them not showing Neo? Like, is it a smart move?
I mentioned on the Gamecast yesterday about how I need to be wined and dined, Sony. That's why I like Microsoft's conference so much more, is because there was a little bit of every piece of Microsoft was represented there as far as their gaming structure of the company. And Sony, just talked about games and VR, and that was it. And I'm like, there's so much other stuff that you need to talk about, that you have time to talk about, and you're just skipping over. Like, PSN needs updates. PSN needs to be pulled out of the dark age and into the light with Xbox Live in the modern era of online gaming. They didn't need to show Gravity Rush 2 or Ni no Kuni 2, but they had so much time, and then Ni no Kuni 2 wasn't at E3, but Gravity Rush 2 was, and it had a gameplay demo and people were playing it, and that game needs its time in the limelight. Why the fuck did they not have, yes, of course, Neo, but that was obvious because they were, like a dog with its tail between his legs over Scorpio. But why the hell did they not have a Persona 5 demo there? I mean, this game's only coming out on PlayStation, and no one in America besides fucking PlayStation Vita owners knows what the hell Persona is. They should have showed that game.
And that's exactly why they didn't even want to take the risk trying to get it popular over here. They just thought, that would be taking a big chance, giving it a marketing push like that in the
why
US.
The exclusivity? Why not just have it on Xbox? Why are you paying? That's what exclusivity is you pay a publisher to make sure you're not releasing it on these other platforms because we're going to help you out financially or whatever. So why would you pay to have this game on PS3 and PS4 and then be like...
And then I'll push it to the masses.
Yeah, we're not even going to try to help sell copies, or we're not going to try to make this a profitable business venture.
Well, that's what I'm saying, is that's probably how they valued it. Like, this was a business decision that it wasn't worth just the time and marketing money to push it there, so they pushed it in other places. It's probably marketed really heavily in Japan, right?
I also think they're going to push it hard at PSX too, probably. I would also assume.
Maybe,
yeah, certainly.
But that may be day late and a dollar short. And also, I think Atlas is already making the trailers for this game. It came out, Atlas had a gameplay demo and a gameplay trailer, so I don't know what Sony would have to do. They already have that massive amount of time at the end of their conference that's just sitting wide open. So I'm like, dude, you guys have so many things that you need to talk about, whether it's PSN or these Japanese games, which, we could go into a whole thing about how Sony doesn't push marketing enough for games that really need it. Until Dawn is a perfect example of that, seeing as how that game came right around Halloween, and all these, core gamers loved it, but nobody in the mainstream really knew about it because Sony didn't tell them about it.
Except the wives and family members of the core gamers.
Right, exactly. Yeah. But you have to tell. Sony has to do a better job as a company, and they've needed to do this since PS3, like beginning of PS3, of communicating to their audience why they need to buy these certain games. And Persona's a huge example. Ni no Kuni. and Gravity Rush, and it just makes sense that these are Japanese examples because, Sony's not doing a good enough job of helping breed a healthy development experience in Japan. Like, Japan is having a tough time keeping up with Western video game development at this point, and Sony could be the ones, obviously it's not fucking Nintendo. Sony could be the ones that really hold the hand of Japanese developers and say, let's help you out. Let's get, Neo could be not the PlayStation Neo, but NIOH. The game could be a huge, these things could be like milestones, could be keystones in aiding the Japanese development community in rising up and meeting Western development where it is in 2016.
Yeah, and the two weird things are, like, this Sony conference seemed like it was, let's show you all the exclusive games for Sony. Why not show, like you said, Ni no Kuni and Persona? It's so weird to me. Also, like, when you think of JRPG, you think of PlayStation. They go hand in hand.
Exactly. So think if Microsoft could get, like, a big studio, like, let's say, Platinum, who's doing Nier Automata right now, like that, if they could get them making a big Japanese JRPG exclusive for Xbox, they would be like, look at this shit, guys. It would be all over their conference, and they would have a huge blowout with gameplay and all this shit. Like, they're excited to have Final Fantasy. They've never had that before. And so, Microsoft would be down your throats with this Japanese shit. One, because they want to actually sell consoles in Japan, but two, because they actually want to have more than just, Western development games on their platform. So I think Sony is really fucking up by not bridging that gap. They had an awesome show at Tokyo Game Show last year, and it showed so many awesome Japanese experiences coming to PlayStation 4, and they're just completely disconnected when it comes to the Western and Eastern sides of their audience.
Yeah, so I think I want to get our closing words, like your one takeaway from Sony. For me, it's evident they're doubling down on VR. Hopefully for them that's a success and it works, because it seemed to me like, I wouldn't say half of their conference, but a good portion of their conference was VR. So, yep, it looks like they're doubling down on VR. That's my one takeaway. What about you guys?
Yeah, and they just, shoved all of their exclusives down our throats, right? Like, they really wanted to emphasize that. Whereas previously, I think last year we saw a lot more Call of Duty and third-party stuff. But this year I felt like it was heavy on the exclusives. Like, it seemed that it was intentional that they wanted to showcase all of their first-party stuff.
I'm glad we didn't see a Kickstarter this year, too.
Right.
You, Jordan, what's your takeaway?
I mean, I just gave you my final words really on that spiel. Like, they had way too much time there at the end, and whether or not they pulled out Neo, there were plenty of things that they could have been spending their time on, and I'm disappointed that they didn't. So that's pretty much it.
Alright, guys, thank you for listening to our Sony discussion. Catch us on all of our other ones going out up throughout the week, and have a good day. Any closing words, guys?
Beyond
greatness awaits.
Yeah, it awaits.
And awaits. And
Bye, guys.
awaits.